Welcome to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast brought to you by Beacon at Salisbury University and BFG Financial Advisors. Since 1992, Leadership Maryland has been connecting and empowering leaders through transformational experiences, dialogue, and education. Each month, we host candid conversations to promote positive outcomes in your organizations and communities. I'm your host, Eric Brotman, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Renée Winsky, CEO of Leadership Maryland. Renée, welcome. Glad to be back with you.
Yes, Eric. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
We have a true celebrity guest today, which I'm excited about. Would you do our kind introduction?
Sure. Joining us today is Kelly Schulz, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Commerce. Kelly has served the state of Maryland in a variety of roles, not only as Secretary of Commerce, but Secretary of the Department of Labor. She's also served the House of Delegates representing Frederick County and has a career in the private sector prior to that. So welcome, Kelly, class of 2016, Leadership Maryland.
That's right. That was the optimistic class, as we remember, Renée. So it's great to be with you both.
Very good. Very good. Well, welcome again. So you have served in many capacities, public sector, both appointed and elected, private sector, many different roles, even a business owner yourself. And then you've served the nonprofit world in Frederick County and in other places throughout our state. How have these experiences and roles prepared you as a leader, particularly in the tumultuous times we're in right now?
Yeah, well, I will say from each of the positions and the wonderful opportunities that I've had through my professional career in all of those different aspects, being able to pick up on, number one, other people's leadership styles, being able to allow yourself the opportunity to really learn and educate yourself in each of those realms, I think really adds to the benefit of going into any leadership role, because when you are a leader, you're not expected to know everything about those what people are doing in those roles, but you are expected to be able to support them and have that idea of, how to go forward and provide them with additional resources and support. And I think that's one of the benefits I have, I believe, is, just really looking at the opportunities that have been in my life and using all of them to come together with solutions and ideas and different paths of moving forward.
Kelly, if I can ask, just for our audience and really for my own edification, the difference between the Department of Commerce and the Department of Labor is opaque to me. What are the missions of the two? They sound awfully similar to me, at least on paper. What are the role differentials and how different is your new gig versus the role you had before?
Well, I think that they're very different, and I'll explain that to you. But coming from the Department of Labor to the Department of Commerce, you'll see how it made such a big benefit for me to be at the Department of Commerce. So Commerce's mission is really being able to grow and expand businesses, right? Our main mission, or at least prior to COVID, has always been, going out and attracting new businesses to the state of Maryland. We are the economic development arm, helping those businesses in our community expand, being able to look at different resources and ways in order to be able to do that. Also at the Department of Commerce, we have the Office of Tourism and Film, and we have our marketing office, we have the Maryland State Arts Council. So that's kind of on that end of where we look at with economic development in general. The Department of Labor is very, very vast. They are a regulatory agency. The Department of Commerce is not a regulatory agency. So the Department of Labor oversees everything having to do with workforce development, adult learning. Obviously, the unemployment insurance system is at the Department of Labor, financial regulations, a lot of the professional licensing that is done in the state is all run through that organization, as well as like those employment standards. What does it look like with minimum wage requirements and OSHA requirements, the Office of Safety and Health that's over there. So the Department of Labor is much more of a regulatory agency. So coming over to the Department of Commerce, it was very beneficial to be able to have that 4 years of background on what businesses we're dealing with in a regulatory environment so that we can help them at Commerce to overcome what some of those barriers might be to expansion of businesses.
Very good. Very, very excellent explanation. And having
I knew I would learn something. I knew I would learn something today. I didn't know I would learn it so quickly.
There you go. So I want to take that a little further. So obviously, leadership comes with successful programs under your belt and not so successful programs under your belt. Could you describe for us perhaps an occasion at both labor and at commerce where perhaps you tried something and it didn't work, and then at the same time, what programs within each are you most proud of?
I'm going to take the last question first because that's the easier one. I'll say that at the Department of Labor, I realized really quickly that always doing the same things in any agency or in any line of work that we are is not always the best way to be, hugely successful. So we started very early on back in 2015 when I started looking at the idea of apprenticeships, overall apprenticeships, not just apprenticeships within the traditional trade industries, but apprenticeships in youth environments and in high schools and in areas like cybersecurity and those high-tech positions and in healthcare, because we knew that at that point in time, we were dealing with a very, very low unemployment rate, and we needed to be able to make sure that we got the best employees started early and get them very well trained into these positions that were in high demand of a workforce. And I'm really proud to say that after 4 years at the Department of Labor, we really made some headway into the apprenticeship program. Maryland has become a leader in youth apprenticeship programs and what we're doing within our K through 12 systems, being able to prepare students for careers that may not necessarily need college and post-secondary education, or it could, but connecting students into a career pathway that's going to be hugely beneficial to them and to their employer was something that I thought was amazing, and that agency continues to do amazing work with that, and I'm really proud of them for that. I will say that the second part at the Department of Commerce, something that I think that we've tried and have not been successful with, and at the same time have been successful with, it's all about shifting gears. So, and this goes directly to our COVID business relief response, where we were tasked by Governor Hogan to distribute roughly about $175 million worth of business relief grants and loans to the business community. That was at the end of March. And I guess what we didn't initially realize is the overall need and the very, very quick response from the business community to put in their applications for that. So the unsuccessful part was that we were not prepared for the number of applications that came in, and we had to kind of start from scratch in order to be able to, just work with the volumes that had come in. The successful part of the program, I will say, is that we were able to change gears and we were able to look at additional resources and able to teach ourselves how to get through the crisis of just needing to be able to provide financial assistance to the business community. And so where we sit today is that now we've gone through 2 rounds of funding, and the system is where it needs to be in order to be able to quickly respond to the needs of businesses should we have to continue in the future in order to be able to do that. So I guess in the throes of defeat, you just dig in and you look at the team and say, well, what can we do to make this better and stronger so that we can complete our mission? So I guess that would be a 2-prong answer for the Department of Commerce.
Kelly, I hate to date myself, particularly in the media, but I've been a Maryland resident for almost 5 decades. I'm not going to say how close I am, but it's almost 5 decades. And also been a business owner in Maryland for almost 20 years. And it's safe to say that before March, Maryland was on a roll from a business perspective, from an economic development perspective. Maryland was on a roll like I had never seen in my adult lifetime. as a resident here long term and as a business owner, and there was a lot to be optimistic and excited about, and then COVID happens. And so, you talk about pivoting, or you talk about, gripping or getting some victories from the teeth of defeat. COVID's changed what your department has been doing. There's no question. You can't have a conversation without thinking about how that's impacted businesses, and particularly small business. How has that adjusted your compass and your department's compass, and how has it created opportunities for you as a leader to make a difference in a really tough environment?
That's a great question. And, obviously our focus has shifted from what our original mission had been as far as the day-to-day operations over the course of, at this point in time, the last 6 months. I had mentioned before that our mission is always to be able to attract businesses, expand businesses, retain businesses here in the state. And during COVID, our response was to just sustain business. And that was a shift for everybody at the Department of Commerce. But the overall umbrella of being able to be that main support for the business community has never changed. There's a nationwide conversation that's happening because economic development in general, historically, has always been working with those industries that are going to be the biggest industries in the state. So in the state of Maryland, we look at cybersecurity and biohealth and life sciences and manufacturing and aerospace and agriculture, right? All of those big ticket items that are big job creators in the state and also big revenue builders in the state. During COVID, the businesses that we have been dealing with on an everyday basis are the small mom and pop shops, right? The retailers of the world, the restaurants, those organizations and those businesses that have never really been a part of our overall goal and plan. They were part of the economic system, but they were not the economic generators. And so I think at this point, we at the national level and of course at the state and local level are looking at those saying, yeah, it's really important to be able to help and to support those. And what does that look like in the future? And there's lots of conversations that are happening around that right now as well. But I will say that we have not stopped with our other main goals as well, right? In order to be able to make the entire world know that we are an innovative state, that we have some of the best resources of anywhere in the world when it comes to the number of military installations and federal laboratories and our university systems and our incubators. All of those high-tech type of industries are going to be unraveled. And I think by the time we go live with this, we have a wonderful marketing program to illustrate the wonderful innovators in Maryland right now. And we're calling this Innovation Uncovered, where we're really looking for the Maryland Future 20, those 20 outstanding businesses in the state of Maryland who are the centerpiece of what it looks like for Maryland entrepreneurs and innovators and showing the resilience of where we are. And so we're not going to back down on that, understanding that we may now have an additional role in what it looks like in those other industries that may not have been always a part of our economic understanding of the state.
Wow, I really like that, Innovation Uncovered. That's cool, very cool. I want to go back in your professional career just a little bit, and the time that you served in the Maryland House of Delegates. I have had the opportunity over time to work with elected officials at the local level, having worked for the City of Greenbelt, Maryland Municipal League, National League of Cities. And I've always felt that elected work is a thankless job. And I want you to talk a little bit about how you stayed connected to your constituency when you were in that role. What was it like to run for office in Frederick? And a little bit about the legislation that you were most proud of that you enabled while you were in the House of Delegates.
Gosh, we could talk for 2 hours on that, Renee, but I'll try to limit that and talk about my constituents first, because when I was elected to my second term in 2015, that's when Governor Hogan was elected as well. And he had asked me to join the administration. I would say that the toughest thing about me leaving the House of Delegates was the fact that I felt that I would be losing some type of that connection with my constituency, my base back in Frederick. As it turns out, I think that I have not lost them. I've grown a little bit closer. We just have more things to talk about, and my constituency has just grown to a statewide level, which is fine. And it's exciting in that way as well. But keeping in contact with the constituents was probably my favorite part of the job. And many people look at it as it is a 90-day job. When you go to the legislature, you spend your 90 days in Annapolis and then you're done being a legislator. And that is really not the case. And it is a 12-month, 7-day-a-week job in order to be able to really connect and understand what the needs are of your constituents and what you can bring back then to the legislature once you've had those connections and solving, their problems. What is their problems with the regulatory system? And that was one of the reasons that I was attracted to going over to the Department of Labor in 2015, was because I heard so many of my business constituents, not only in Frederick, but from across the state, that had concerns with the way that their businesses were being treated and the regulatory process that was coming through that Department of Labor. And we worked really diligently based on their concerns for 4 years in order to be able to take down some of those barriers of those regulatory burdens. And I would say one of the greatest, one of the other great things about being in the House of Delegates is that you're surrounded by a bunch of your own peers, your colleagues that are working on the same things on both sides of the aisle. And I've had many pieces of legislation that were supported by so many that are in both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, that you're working on resolving policy issues and you're not looking to always make a political statement. And that those were the times that I liked the most when I was in the House. And I still call many of them my friends to this day. I would say the one piece of legislation that got passed a lot of bills while I was there for the 4 years, but there's one that sticks out, and that was a family that had come to me very early on in my term, and unfortunately their mother had passed away. She had been murdered by their stepfather. Kind of a heavy conversation, but there was some parts of the law when it came to insurance and estates that did not benefit the family, and it did benefit the person that was now incarcerated. And we changed that law and we named it after their mother, the Ann Sue Metz law. And I'm really proud that no other family will have to go through that type of a process again in the future.
Wow, that's I did not expect to be talking about that this morning, Kelly. That's heavy. You're right. I'm going to throw something else out at you. You talked about the big industries in Maryland: aerospace, biotech, cybersecurity, agriculture, manufacturing. There's certainly lots of them. The one thing I never hear, and I'm really curious why, and maybe you can give me that aha moment that I'm looking for. It seems to me that our confluence of I-95 and I-70, coupled with our access to the Chesapeake Bay and the Port of Baltimore, should make us one of the transportation and shipping hubs of the United States. And I think the port's doing really well. My question is there anything we can do to start bringing that kind of business to our area and maybe taking some of it from Newark, New Jersey? That seems, at least to me as a non-interested party, they seem to be eating our lunch in that regard. Is that something we've talked about at all? Is there a way to take advantage of that unique confluence of geography?
Absolutely. And, you're absolutely right. The 95 corridor is a wonderful benefit to the state, along with 70 and the routes to our mid-Atlantic region and beyond. Yes, the port up until COVID was having a record-breaking year again, and they continue to make advancements of where they are. They are recovering very quickly from where we were with shipping. Obviously, with our global partners and the trade, it was difficult during some months during COVID, but right now they are they're really picking up steam. We work very, very closely with the port. We have a team at the Department of Commerce that works with site selectors from all over the country and all over the world. There is a couple of very large, so I think we are stealing some of the stuff from New Jersey. I guess I'll just get right to the point. We have some wonderful, amazing distribution centers that have opened up, and in many ways we're running out of room for some of the larger of the distribution centers that we have that have come in. Amazon has been a great partner. Kroger just opened up a major new facility in Frederick County. We have major distribution facilities and logistics hubs in Cecil County, all along the 95 corridor, and they've been very, very successful. And I will say that Trade Point Atlantic, which is, obviously adjacent there to the port, what they have been able to do to diversify that location and that site, where it was with the steel plant, as you know, now is getting to a very full capacity with the distribution centers that are there. So this is definitely a major focus that we have had, and we never have a lack of those types of larger companies looking to us to be competitive with those other states that we have been very successful with the attractions of them.
So that's a very optimistic answer about our Maryland's role in that I-95 corridor. So going back to the word optimistic that you used earlier to describe your class, without getting into the areas of the class of what's said in the room stays in the room, the Vegas rules, what do you remember of your class and them being so optimistic?
Gosh, first of all, I remember some of the most kind-hearted and brilliant professionals, and we still, just like all of the other classes, we stay in touch. But the big part of what I remember is open-mindedness and being able to really have those very strong dialogues. But I don't know if it was unique, obviously, Renee, because I have not been a part of other classes. But I think when we came to the end of our dialogue and our discussion, which I think is why we call ourselves the optimists, is that there was always the thought that, yes, this problem exists, but we have the power amongst ourselves and amongst our community to make it better. And everybody was solution oriented. And I think that anytime we have those solutions in our mind and a way to want to be able to make change, then that is optimistic, that we don't have to be stuck with the problem at hand.
I love that. We were class of 2009, which was the class of taste. So, we thought we had great taste. It's good to be optimistic, too. That sounds really good. I'm going to throw something else at you today, Kelly, because I know historically being a leader a lot of times is about letting other people shine. It's about not being a manager, but truly being a leader. And in today's world, with pervasive social media and enormous attempts at misinformation, and I imagine this is a cauldron that is incredibly difficult to navigate because of some of that. How has the pervasiveness of social and instant judgment and instant media affected leadership at the department's level, at the State House, just around the state, in your opinion?
Well, obviously, so everybody deals with, both the good and the bad of social media at the department. And I know I can speak for the administration, being able to use and get, good quality information and educate people out through social media sources is it's what we have to do, right, as a society. It's just there. It's one of those things that is a benefit to us. But yeah, I mean, there definitely are those areas where it can be a little difficult to maneuver, especially when it comes to the misinformation. And I think that what we struggle with, at least on the government level, I'll just talk about government, is, I'll give an example where the governor could have a press conference about, what types of businesses are reopening, and then it goes out on social media and somebody has it completely wrong. just because, they misread the words, or they didn't completely read an executive order, and they just, kind of generalize the statements. And so that's where we have to then go back and really do more educating and understand that people might need some additional resources in order to be able to make that helpful. So I think we just can't rely solely on social media as being our educational input, right? We have to have other types of resources. So we, within the state government, develop websites and, put lots of information out there. The trouble is people want the information really fast and really condensed, whereas sometimes the information we have can't be condensed and it can't be really fast. It has to be deliberative. And that's what we work towards.
Very good. Certainly adds a challenge to one's day job, dealing with that instantaneous judgment. I want to talk a little bit, back in 2017, we merged with the youth program, Maryland Leadership Workshops, and you have young people in your home, not that young, but young. And you have young people that have worked in your departments, and you've even supported some of those folks to go through Leadership Maryland. What's your message to young leaders out there today?
I would say patience. Any leader needs to have a lot of patience. As I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, jumping to conclusions is not where we need to be as leaders. It's sitting back and soaking in the information in order to be able to determine paths moving forward. Inclusivity, being able to make sure that you are not surrounding yourself with people that are just going to agree with you all the time. I think that is extremely important, to be able to get many different perspectives in order to be able to come up with some decisions. Obviously, as leaders, you're going to have to sometimes make a very fast decision, but I think that's based on your record of making tough choices in the past, and so that helps to build upon the way that you can make your choices in the future. But having people around you and surrounding yourself with people that are going to provide different perspectives is critical to being a good leader, in my opinion.
Kelly, it's hard to believe, but we are approaching the end of our show. And I know you said you could speak for 2 hours on a number of these topics individually, and perhaps we'll have you back in the future. It was great to get a chance to connect with you. Want to leave you with the last question. That is for the folks listening to this podcast who presumably are familiar with Leadership Maryland, and maybe want to be engaged and want to be better leaders. What is that one tip or that one thing that you think people could walk away with today, who want to grow their leadership acumen or ability? And you said patience. Patience is hard to develop in and of itself, but something timeless that would be that one next step that someone listening could take to become a better leader. What would that one thing be?
Well, I don't know if you can go to school for this, and I don't know if there's any courses for this, but there's one word that always jumps out in my mind, and that's empathy. Understanding what your leadership means to the people that are surrounding you is something that is really critical. Understanding that you're not a leader for the sake of being a leader. You're a leader because there are individuals who are depending on you to be able to provide them with a path to their success. And understanding that everything we do has an impact on others around us, whether they be the leadership team that I have at the Department of Commerce, or the decisions that I make that are going to impact those thousands of businesses and thousands of employees and employers in the community at large. Making decisions and being a leader in certain ways has a global importance to it. And it's not about your own individual world. It's about the world in which you're living.
Kelly, you've been an amazing guest, and I can't thank you enough. You're one of the busiest people in the state of Maryland, and for you to take some time with us today is a big deal. Wanted to thank you for being a guest on Engaging Leaders, and we hope we'll have you back sometime.
I hope so. You have been enjoyable. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Kelly.
And for all of you out there, thank you for listening to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast brought to you by Beacon at Salisbury University and BFG Financial Advisors. This is your host, Eric Brotman, along with co-host Renée Winsky, reminding you to stay engaged. Be sure to tune in for new content every month.
You've been listening to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast. Leadership Maryland is the foremost statewide organization where critical conversations occur in an environment of trust and civility to facilitate actionable change. For more information, visit us at www.engagingleaderspodcast.com. Please subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.